Hi, Savannah.
Hey, Emily.
Tell me about Speak Now.
Okay, here we go. So this album came out in 2010. It's her third studio album. It's the first album that I listened to with my mom, like in its entirety. So I told you that I listened to Teardrops on My Guitar. Mm-hmm. And that was off of limewire.com.
Right.
Illegal. It felt like a secret. It felt like I had to hide this because I'm bad. But then my mom, I don't know how, maybe she found out about LimeWire and knew that I was interested in Taylor Swift. But she, out of the blue one day, came to me with Speak Now, its purple cover. And she was like, look, this is a blonde girl like you. She does music. Maybe we should listen to this together. And I said, sure, Mom. And it became iconic for me personally. So I do have strong emotional ties to this album. But there are a couple things that we absolutely have to know going into listening to this album. First is the whole drama with Kanye West.
Oh, right. You showed me the videos of the awards thing, right?
Yes, that's the VMAs from the 2009 VMAs.
Okay.
So there's a lot more that happens with Kanye West in the future. And we will get to that because, wow. But what happened in 2009, so obviously a year before this album is released, she's receiving an award for Best Female Video for You Belong With Me. So she is going up to receive her award for this video, which is iconic. We watched it together.
Definitely.
We loved it. So she is in the middle of doing her thank you speech. It's one of the first big awards that she's won. She's so excited. And then Kanye West comes up onto the stage. The camera just cuts to him being there. I don't know where he appeared from, but he takes the microphone from her and says, Taylor, I'm going to let you finish. But first, I have to let everyone know that Beyonce had one of the greatest videos of all time. And the video cuts over to Beyonce and she is like, oh my, what is happening? Trying to remain classy as she is. And it's devastating.
Yeah, that's incredibly rude.
Incredibly rude. She's so young. She's like, what do I do? This icon in music has just interrupted my thank you speech and basically said that I don't deserve it. Backstage, Pink, the singer, goes and gives him a piece of her mind, which I'm like, go off, Pink. That seems very up her alley to do. And then later in the show, Beyonce wins another award. I don't know what award that was, but she invites Taylor Swift to come back out onto the stage and finish her thank you speech, which I think is so classy.
Yeah, that was great.
So that is an event that really affected her, as you might imagine. Another thing I want to point out about this album, and I think will shed some light on how we evaluate it, is that Speak Now is a compilation of letters to specific people, and mostly of words that she wished that she had said to them at the time, and in the hidden messages in her lyric sheets. What are they called?
Liner notes.
Liner notes, thank you. There's a real word for that. Wow.
You got to slide it out of the jewel case to find out.
Slide it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, Emily's teaching me all the technical terms for things like liner notes and zoegma. And I'm just over here making things
I'm just
up.
trying to provide value here.
You provide so much value. I'm literally just speaking at you right now.
I'm here for it.
Thank you. So one of the hidden messages for the song Speak Now is you always regret what you don't say. And there's an even longer message at the beginning of the liner notes that explains that more in depth. So that's kind of the background of this album. Give me your thoughts on what you first thought of when you had finished listening to the album as far as themes go.
Yeah, there was, there's such a stark contrast between Fearless and Speak Now, where Fearless is clearly a fictional arc and it's one story, and Speak Now, she's not doing the same thing again, which is something I really appreciate about her so far, is she's never doing the same thing twice. So she's already told a single story with an album. So now everything about this album feels more in depth. Each song is a deeper dive. So the theme, I think you told me sort of that theme right after we finished listening, and I was like, oh yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you if I honestly would have picked up on that, because the
I'm
fact
so
is
sorry.
I was told. But that's okay. This is great, because as soon as you said that, I was like, oh yeah, absolutely, that's here. And Taylor says that it's here. So if I'd bought the CD in its jewel case and slid out the liner notes and read it, that's what I would have known. I don't know, I kind of disagree. I regret a lot of things I say in life. So it's kind of hard to imagine regretting something I didn't say. Although I guess I do that too. I just live with a lot of self-criticism.
Living with a lot of regret.
No, I
Too personal
I,
for the
I don't
podcast.
I don't think of myself as living with a lot of regrets, but I don't know. Words are hard.
They are hard, yeah.
And I mean, that's something that Taylor talks about on this album, right? Is that saying the right thing seems so obvious in retrospect.
Right.
And in Mean, she talks about how hurtful words are.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's just the power of words is so interesting. And I think that speaks to who she is as a songwriter.
Yeah.
Again, there's not a lot musically groundbreaking on this album, but there's so much that she's doing with the words and the little bit of wordplay and
tons of wordplay.
Yeah.
I love that about this album specifically is we're starting to get into what I call the red string board of theories. It gets much bigger and more complicated on the next album, Red, but yeah, she starts intertwining a lot of her songs, I think, thematically by using the same symbols and visuals or lines to tie them together. So even if they're not about the same person, she's already tying ideas together with lyrics from different songs. Like, for example, in Sparks Fly, there is, well, the line she's talking about sparks fly. And then later in the Story of Us, which is about John Mayer, and we will get to that, is I used to think one day we'd tell the story of us, how we met, and the sparks flew instantly. Sparks Fly is not about John Mayer, but she's
on the surface.
Yeah, on the surface, but she's drawing the ideas from Sparks Fly just with that one line into the Story of Us and painting that background. That's the first two lines of the song.
And that's the power of an artist, right? Is to look into these disparate situations and see the common themes and tell a story with the things that were the same but different somehow. Like that's what it means to tell a story almost.
Yeah. And I think I had mentioned to you when we first listened to it together on Sparks Fly, I looked over at you and I was like, this is really giving The Way I Loved You vibes from Fearless.
Yeah.
Right? That volatile relationship. And she's painting the same picture of like being in the rain and having a conflict, but still being like drawn to that person. And so you have that image from The Way I Loved You being portrayed in Sparks Fly, and then you're having all of Sparks Fly and all the emotion there being tied into the Story of Us with one line. And I'm like, that's it. You're a genius. What a move. That's 2 albums that you've spanned already and 3 songs to deal with one idea of one person.
Yeah.
My mind is blown. Is not your mind also blown?
Well, it reminds me, maybe this is probably too nerdy for this podcast, but
nothing's too nerdy for this podcast.
Like the way Hebrew scriptures are quoted traditionally, where you don't actually quote them, you sort of conglomerate them, and that ties all of the connotations from all those separate passages together.
Yeah.
So when you quote Hebrew poetry, you're quoting like 6 ideas at once.
Which is insane. How beautiful is that?
How beautiful is that? And that's what Taylor's doing.
She is. So what we're saying is she's on par with Hebrew poetry writers.
Maybe.
I'm just drawing that to your attention so you know what you've said, and I can impress that on you, because my vibe is that this was not your favorite album, and I'm trying to convince you that it could be.
I do think it's more mature in its songwriting and more mature in its composition than Fearless.
What do you mean by the composition? Like musically, or?
In the way the album is arranged. A story arc is an incredibly intricate thing, right? Like it's not a simple, straightforward thing to tell a story.
Right.
Like there's an art to that. And she pulled that off with Fearless. So Speak Now, she's doing something different. And like I said, it's a deeper dive with every song. So she's knowingly not doing a story arc. And so she's
giving us snippets.
She's giving us snippets, and it's allowing her to exemplify more songwriting skill for sure. I think each song is more tied to reality and at a deeper level.
Yeah, I would say, and we talked about this a little bit at first when we listened to it, is that this album is marked by much more maturity of character, like just growing up in general of age.
Yeah, and the struggles that she has with that, the struggles of growing up and moving out. Never grow up.
Like heartbreaking and not in the way that you expect it to be.
Yeah, I think you actually like got out the tissues when we listened to that song, and then I didn't need them, and I was like, what's wrong with me?
No, I really thought the first verse talking about a mom and a baby was really gonna get you, and then she moves on really quickly from that idea, though. She takes on a different like narrator point of view,
and it's kind of clear
in the next verse.
it's clear that she's going somewhere with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's clear she kind of, at first she's taking the point of view of the mom, and then she steps to the side and she's saying, look, your mom's driving you to the mall or to the movie theater or whatever. And then she steps back into it and kind of reveals that she was a little girl all along. In her mind, she's moved back into herself. And there's a lot of tension with her family in this album.
Yeah, that's because tension in her family has grown.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because she's now growing up and moving out.
Yeah.
Like, it's a different stage in life for sure. I don't know what was going on in her personal life.
Her parents were not divorced yet, but they were definitely having problems. I'm not sure if they were separated by the time this album was being written or recorded, but we see her deal with that on the first track.
Very
in
first
Mine.
track. Yeah, the careless man's careful daughter.
Yeah.
Is how she describes herself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which, yeah, that line hits hard every time she uses it.
Yeah. And she turns it on her head later where, like, in the last verse of that song where he's like...
Yeah, when she puts the chorus in his mouth, how her love is talking to her, saying, I fell in love with a careless man's careful daughter. And they're working through their conflict rather than giving into it.
Right. Exactly. And then she reframes it to where he's talking to her, and a careless man's careful daughter is the only thing that's ever been mine, and like how he doesn't want to lose her.
Yeah.
In the same way that she doesn't want to lose him, and like differentiating their struggles from her parents' struggles.
What's the line? We're not going to make our parents' mistakes.
Yeah, that's literally the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that opens the album, is this departure from who she's been as constantly defined by the love of her family. In the past 2 albums, we've had at least 2 defined tracks about her family. I'm kind of inferring that on the first album from the music video for I'm Only Me When I'm With You. The lyrics could be about a boyfriend, but the music video is home videos of her family.
Right.
So it's clear that that's what she wanted associated with that song. And then The Best Day.
Yeah. And it's so close to
Fearless.
the end of the album, like we talked about last episode.
Yeah. So that's where she's returning for comfort. So now opening the album with Mine and this sort of rupture in her family, and then going through Never Grow Up, where she is walking not out of her family, and she's not walking out on her family. It's not like she's abandoning them, but,
no, but there's a separation.
She's separating just as everyone separates from their family as they grow up.
She's lamenting that a bit, but also is like, okay, well, here I am in my new apartment. They dropped me off.
Yep.
This is it. And I think that's interesting because on the last album we talked about, there was a theme from her going from the comfort and the dream of romantic relationships, and then changing that to going back to being comforted by her family. And now, contrastly, we have her seeing that her family is not being as much of a comfort for her anymore. And at the end of this album, we have Long Live, which is about and to her band and also the fans. So she's turning again from something that once gave her comfort and is turning to, okay, well, now my music, my musical family,
the life that she's building for herself.
I'm building.
Yeah.
Yes. And the fans who support me, even if they weren't there at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's a big shift.
It's a big shift.
It's a sad shift in a way, because obviously I think people want to be supported by their families.
Yeah. And it's a turning to a self-selected community in a sense, which has its upsides and its downsides. Yeah. There's, living in the vicinity where I grew up has its upsides and downsides, right? Like, there's the community that I have grown up with, the people who have been there for me since the beginning. I'm so incredibly blessed to have that around me. That also means that there are people who have seen you at your worst. And they're
good or
still
ill.
here. Yeah. So it's like, there's upsides and downsides. So when you leave that, which is, I'm aware that that's a weird thing to have and desire, but like when you have a self-selected community, you're there's a danger of building an echo chamber for yourself.
Oh, because you're genuinely selecting what they're perceiving about you, because you get to show them what you want to show them from here on out, kind of a thing.
Yeah. You get to curate not only your own image, but your friend group.
That's true. Something that's interesting, though, about Long Live is that it's still tying in those fairy tale themes.
Yes,
that
absolutely.
We've seen all along. Like when she's saying, long live the walls we crashed through. I had the time of my life fighting dragons with you. And she's talking about her kingdom, how the kingdom lights shine, they're heroes, like
kings and queens and crowns. And
yeah. And I think that's so interesting because in the last last album, we sort of had this shift from fairy tales are a bit childish and like dreams and lovely dreams, and you have like when you get disappointed, we're putting those behind us, and she's picking them up again.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah.
Right? Like that maybe those disappointments that she suffered were just for a moment, and it's okay to come back and have those dreams again, even though she is markedly more mature now.
Yeah, she's lived through more life. Now.
And some rough things. Like,
yeah,
let's talk about some of these songs. Like, wow. So we talked about Mine, Sparks Fly, Back to December.
Yeah, the thing that sticks out to me in Back to December is this recognition that she's caused hurt and she's taking responsibility for that.
Yeah.
Like, that's a hard thing to do in life in general, but it's certainly a hard thing to admit in music that's going to be out there for the whole world to see, especially since so many of her songs reflect on people who have hurt her, for her to take that responsibility and say, I wish I could go back and say things differently because I hurt you and that's my fault. I love that. I love that spirit of being willing to admit you're wrong. It's like, I need that spirit. I sure do.
Same. And like, she has nothing but compliments for, this is about Taylor Lautner, who coincidentally is the one who presented her with the award that Kanye West interrupted her
Was
speech
that
for.
before or after they dated?
They were currently dating. It wasn't like confirmed, but then later it was confirmed. And she talks about it in Back to December. When You Saw Me Cry for the first time, essentially she's saying was in September, which was when the VMAs
Really?
happened.
Oh my goodness.
So that night was the first time he saw her cry, and she's talking about that in the song. But she calls him, even in her liner notes, a beautiful boy, and like so many sentiments where she's like, he didn't deserve what I did to him. He was such a nice person, and I was the one who did him wrong. It's sad, but like beautiful.
Yeah. And that ties in with the themes of Never Grow Up and Innocent. Both. I know we'll talk more about Innocent later.
I mean, we can talk about it.
But this trying to live with regrets and trying not to be consumed by them, to reconcile your idea of yourself with the mistakes that you've made and to put them behind you. And what does that look like for this person? Like, you and I are Christians. We have a specific understanding of how guilt is dealt with. That is, it's taken away from us by Jesus taking it on the cross. I don't know if this is going to stay in the final cut or not, but here we are talking about it. But that's really a complex problem for a person to deal with as they're wrestling in, especially in this unique period of transition where she's leaving her family, trying to figure out who she is and what the things that she's done mean for who she is. What is her identity, and how are her mistakes wrapped up or not wrapped up in that identity?
And in other people. Like, I mean, so Innocent is about Kanye West. We're talking about the theme. We might as well just go with it. So it's about Kanye West, and it's her dealing with the aftermath of that really embarrassing moment. That's embarrassing.
It's not how you want to be brought into the public eye.
No, not at all. And like horribly traumatic. Like, she's so young, and you have this like much older, he was 32, this much older, we'll get to the age gap in a minute. So he was a much older person than her, and like already
he's an established star.
Yeah. And like taking that moment from her and giving it to somebody else and essentially saying you don't deserve that. And then her response, I think, is so lovely. It's like the most graceful response that I could think of. And she mentions, she talks to an interviewer about this, where she's like, a lot of people expected me to write a song about him. I wanted to write a song to him. And she's writing that, you know, your string of lights is still bright to me. Like, even after that, like, her idea of him wasn't diminished, and there's forgiveness in that. Like, who you are is not who you've been. You're still an innocent. I have chills. I have chills. That's a lovely sentiment to have about somebody who's done you wrong and did not outright apologize at the time. Now, their relationship gets more complicated later. But
we're going back to 2010.
But we're going back to 2010, and what a lovely reaction to something that was really horrible.
Yeah, it was so sweet. I think that's a genuine response too. I don't think she's choosing to do that for the sake of looking gracious. I think that had to come from the heart.
Yeah, because there's so many artists that are widely renowned who just only do slam tracks. And people are like, yeah, that person deserved it. And honestly, he kind of would have deserved, like, I wouldn't have been like, he didn't deserve a slam track. Like, that was a mean thing to do. But that's not what she came up with. I talked about the age gap between
Oh,
Kanye
yeah.
West and Taylor Swift. Let's talk about a different age gap.
Different age gap.
And our track 5,
Dear John.
Dear John.
Which I think is a really excellent song. It just rings so true if you've ever known anybody in a situation with power dynamics and an age difference in a relationship.
Yep.
Makes you mad.
Yep.
Yeah. But it's there's so much for me in this song. Please talk about it.
Okay, so John Mayer and Taylor Swift were originally like connected in 2009. They collaborated on his single Half of My Heart. They sing together. That's where they met and they began a relationship. She is 19 years old. That's incredibly young, and your brain is not fully developed, but okay. And he's 32. We're not 32 years old, and I could never imagine what I would have in common romantically with a 19-year-old. Next to nothing.
Yeah.
If anything at all. And so this is a really traumatic experience for her. And we see this not only in Dear John, but in future albums. She continues to write about him. One of my, I think this song is about John Mayer. I may be incorrect.
But roll with it. That's your interpretation.
It's my interpretation. Would've, could've, should've. It's very possible that it's actually about Jake Gyllenhaal, but the two relationships I think for her and throughout her discography are marked by a loss of girlhood and a loss of innocence and a significant age gap, and how that really affected her relationship with both of them. So yeah, we have to talk about it because this song is super deep. It's her track 5. There are themes in this song that continue for the rest of her career, and he actually wrote a song in response to her writing about him.
Oh, really?
In 2013, so it's after her next album, and he references songs from Red, but it's called Paper Doll. He is not very complimentary to her at all. It's surprise, a man who's been outed as doing something awful wasn't very gracious about it, but he's essentially, one of the lines in this song is, was the fall too far for a paper doll like her? And if the fall is far, it's because of you, sir. So maybe it was too much for her, but she was 19. So where do you...
Just the mismatch in the power of the imagery gets me, where like a paper... Imagine dropping a paper doll. It floats and nothing happens to it at the bottom.
So you've done nothing to her.
That's lazy imagery compared to everything Taylor's ever written.
I agree with you so wholeheartly.
Yeah. This song.
It's a lot. Tell me, you have more feelings. I see it in your face. Tell me more.
Just the reality of it gets to me, where she talks about certain experiences that paint the picture of a toxic, if not explicitly in the song, abusive relationship, where she's on the phone. She's wondering which version of him she's going to get.
Come on.
Classic abuse signs, you know?
Yeah.
Is it going to be the one who loves me, or is it going to be the one who's angry and upset and unpredictable, volatile?
Possibly also condescending.
Yeah.
I that's the vibe I get, you know, knowing all of the things about that relationship and in the song, that condescension doesn't seem like a big leap to me.
And that's a theme from her first album, where she's a freshman dating a senior, right?
Yeah.
Like his fake smiles are condescending.
This is that times 10.
It's
Yeah.
It's cranked up.
And then in The Story of Us, which is also about John Mayer, she's talking about how even after all of that, like, the battle's in your hands now, but I would lay my armor down if you'd say you'd rather love than fight. Like, she is grasping at straws from this older man and getting nothing in return.
Yeah. And that's where it is, right? It lies in pride, in this, just the lack of true humility, what we would call repentance, of clinging to oneself and one's chosen sins rather than love. I do love that she names the song Dear John. I don't know. Do you know the background of like the classic Dear John letter?
No.
That's when men would go off to war. We're talking like World War II in Korea.
Okay. Oh, the big ones.
The big ones.
Yeah.
The Dear John letter was a letter from your girl back home saying she's gone off with somebody else.
Ooh, I didn't know that. Go off, Taylor. Okay.
Yeah, so that's the context, right? Just for the title. And that, I think that adds a layer of, I don't know what to think about it. Because usually when we see the Dear John letter in other media, like if you're watching MASH or something like that, it's a really sad thing because you're seeing it from the man's perspective. You're imagining being all alone, just hoping somebody's waiting for you back home safe.
This brings something to mind. She's once again taking something cultural and grabbing it and using it for her own purposes and saying like, when I'm thinking about this, if I'm John reading this letter in the context of Dear John, like I've been hurt by somebody else and I didn't do anything wrong, which is his feelings toward her if we're going to take Paper Doll into account, which we ought to. And she's saying, no, you did something wrong. This is not for nothing.
Yeah.
Dear John, I see it all now that you're gone. Don't you think 19 was too young to be messed with? The girl in the dress cried the whole way home. I'm like, go off, Taylor.
Yeah, and she doesn't do that. The skill in that lies in bringing the context with her, right? She's not taking a phrase and then using it in a way that is disconnected from the connotations before. She's turning it to her own purposes rather than wrenching it out of its previous meaning.
Yeah.
She's adding meaning, not taking it away.
Exactly.
Like, whereas Paper Doll, like, has the guy ever played with a paper doll? Of course not, because he's a dude.
Yeah.
But
I mean, neither have I, but I get the context.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's taking like his song, and we'll have to listen to this.
We will, because I want it to
angry.
be better than my initial impression of that image.
It won't be. I'll tell you that. He's sad. He's taking lines from some of the songs in Red and using them in that song so that everybody knows it's about Taylor, and he's just calling her a paper doll.
Yeah, that's not clever.
Yeah, it's not. You're not clever, John. Please excuse yourself. Okay, and then we should continue on though, because there's other reactions, other notes that she's giving in this album. One of them is Mean, and I really enjoy this song.
It's really satisfying. It's just kind of a cathartic kind of a thing.
And it's like the vibe of the song for me is not like I'm gonna completely ruin your life, but just like you can't really affect me more than you have now because I'm gonna be someone and you're not.
Yeah, it's like I'm not gonna wreck you because it's not worth my time to wreck you, which is it's kind of badass. Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah,
and I'm gonna name this guy because he deserves it. This was about a critic, Bob Lefsetz, if I'm saying his name right, after a performance that she did, which I will give him credit. It was not her best vocal performance. She was pitchy, but a music critic should also know that there are other things that can contribute to a bad performance than a person not being able to sing.
Right, which is what apparently he said about her. If we're taking her at her words.
That's a direct quote.
Okay, yeah.
She's directly quoting him.
Good. That's the thing she should do in this situation.
And he has a lot more to say. It's actually a pretty brutal review of her. And I'm like, okay, well, we've both sang on a stage before. If you can't hear yourself, of course you're going to be pitchy. You're all over the place. There's a live band behind you.
And depending on like the resonances of the shape of the building, everything, like things can mess with your perception of pitch for sure.
Absolutely. If you ate chocolate before you, or any
or
sort
milk,
of dairy,
or a cocktail the night before,
like there's so many things that can affect your vocals on a performance. So to say that someone has no talent based off one performance is, in my opinion, not a good music review.
You could say this was not a good performance.
Correct.
That would be fair. But to say that person can't sing it's insufficient evidence.
I'm so glad that you agree with me on that.
You thought I was going to be the critic.
I mean, I did phrase that a Swiftie is trying to convince a music critic about Taylor Swift.
Critic just means you judge people. That's all it means. Did you know that? Like the word comes from the Greek word krino, which means to judge.
I didn't, but it makes sense.
Yeah, and so when I'm walking around and I'm in a grumpy mood, I just go krino, 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 krino. I judge.
Did you? Yeah, you just speak Greek in your day to day. This is why we're friends. You're amazing, and I love you. So anyway, Mean. It's not as mean as he was. Yep,
he was meaner, and it's a fun song. Can we talk about the other super fun song?
Yes! You start us.
Enchanted.
Is it not enchanting?
It's enchanting. And so the song is about Adam Young, also known as Owl City. And I love Owl City. I was already there before this song, right?
Yeah.
But just the glow of it. Oh, the other thing about this album, which is totally exemplified in this song, is she's branching out into different genres. She's already leaving country behind because she's done it. She's like, we're going to do something new now. Like Haunted, I could totally believe she'd just been listening to Nightwish or something. And was like, I'm going to write a Nightwish song.
Yeah.
But Enchanted is just so different, and the melody is so different. It doesn't go where you expect it to go at any point, but it doesn't feel disjointed because of that. It's just lovely. airy and otherworldly in its beauty. And then to find out that it's about one of the musicians that I just think is the most sincere and lovely individuals, it brings me joy.
Does it give you more points in your mind that she thinks so much of such a wonderful person to you?
Yes, it does.
Like she's valuing something that you also value.
Yes.
I'm trying everything I can here, okay? But Enchanted is so enchanting. Mm-hmm. It's lovely. And I think it does perfectly capture that feeling of like you meet someone for the first time. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say something that I learned off the internet and I think is completely true, which is that like a crush is a lack of information.
Oh, yes.
And she has no information about this man.
It's feeling very personally invested in wanting to know about this person.
Yes. And wow. It's just beautiful.
It really is. It's a beautiful moment. It's a beautiful concept. Mm-hmm. Like it's the feeling you should get in every story at some point.
Yes.
Right? That like the prince and the princess are they're meeting in the woods and they're dancing and there are woodland creatures running about and it's just perfect.
I could listen to that song on repeat all day.
Yeah, I'm sure I may have done that.
You ran straight home to your husband and showed him this song.
I did, actually. I ran straight home and I was like, did you know that Owl City also did this song?
Yeah. He like released it on Valentine's Day to her.
The sweetest thing. And Owl City, Adam is just the sweetest person.
Now, I personally don't love his version of the song because I don't think his style goes with the style of the song, but it's a sweet sentiment.
Yeah, and it was a response. It's not his song, right?
No, yeah.
So it's not gonna sound like
the way it was written. But Taylor, I was enchanted to meet you too.
My heart.
Stop. I'm grinning. I am dead. Mm-hmm. Yes. So that magical, lovely. And then I feel like for whatever reason, Last Kiss and Long Live fit in the same box with Enchanted, not because of musical vibes or anything, but because of like that fairy tale theme. Mm-hmm. And Last Kiss, I'm not sure that it has any sort of fairy tale lyric, but kind of like the letdown of what was in the last album on Forever and Always, because they're both written about Joe Jonas. Oh, something important and fun is that Joe Jonas was her first love. That she says that my first love. He broke up with her over the phone in 27 seconds.
Wow.
Yes,
that's pretty low.
Yeah, and then the intro to Last Kiss, the instrumental, is 27 seconds long. And it's just
that's
a little
so artistically on the nose and perfect. I love it. It's subtle enough.
It's subtle enough, and I'm like, I mean, she wasn't so subtle on the Ellen DeGeneres show when she was like, yeah, this boy broke up with me in 27 seconds, but she apologized later to him, and they were cool.
Well, she ties Enchanted and Last Kiss together with the timing. Enchanted talks about the question at 2 a.m. Who do you love?
Oh, yeah. And then bit through the something at 1:58.
Lit through the darkness at 1:58 is in the first verse of Last Kiss.
You're right.
So they are tied together for Taylor as well as for you. You are justified.
I was like, I know that they fit together in my brain. I can't remember why, but they are tied together because 2 a.m. is the hour when you think about things like that. It's not a time where you should make judgments about your life and how satisfied you are with it. Yeah. It is a time to mull over, who am I interested in? Yeah. Who do I love?
I will say Last Kiss kind of drags for me musically. It's a 6-minute song. Dear John was a 6-minute song, but I didn't feel like it to me.
I feel the exact opposite.
That's so funny.
Last Kiss, I feel like is as long as it should be. And Dear John, I'm like, I get it. He was awful. We're done. But that's interesting that they're the same length. I didn't realize. And then Long Live, again, we come back to the same fairy tale theme. It's a song that I feel like she should have ended her Speak Now tours with. I don't think she did it all the time, if ever. But she did in this Eras tour that she's doing now, and her section that's dedicated to Speak Now with Long Live.
Because it's a good ending.
Yeah,
you know,
great.
It's the way she chooses to end her albums, I think, so far has been consistent. It's hopeful. It's about the music. It's for the fans and for the people who helped her, who won this victory with her. I think it's a really sweet dedication.
I hope that you're getting the sweetness vibes.
Oh, I I am. Yeah.
Good.
I don't feel like they're for me yet. So I think if I'm clearly not yet a Swiftie because I don't take it personally.
Man.
We'll get there though.
One day. Oh, I just want to say that once again, pointing out the 13 being one of her favorite numbers, or her favorite number. This album was going to have 13 songs on it, except for the deluxe edition, which I don't really count as like the actual
Right. We're not
the
going
set
from there.
track list. Yeah. So it was gonna have 13 tracks on it, and then Sparks Fly was so wildly popular that she's like, all right, I'll put it on for you guys.
Man, see, I don't get that because
Really?
Sparks Fly, the chord progression it's the chord progression. Like I put together and perform an entire mashup of songs with this exact chord progression because every song in the world is this chord progression. It's 1 5 6 4, and it's just, you know, a lot of those are songs that I like, and that's why I perform them. But it's really not different, and it's not the song that grabs me from this album. I don't find it lyrically
Really?
like it conveys something. It's just not a world I want to live in.
And that's totally fair. I have to say that I would have never thought about the chord progression. So like when I listen to that song, I'm not like, wow, what a generic chord progression. Like, because it's so widely used, I'm like, yeah, that's a song. But I love the lyrics. Like the opening lyric is like, the way you move is like a full-on rainstorm. Excuse me? Come to me with a more powerful image, I beg. Oh wait, I'll just wait here. And I'm a house of cards.
It's fine. I don't think it's awful. Again, it's just kind of it doesn't grab me.
I think your experience in life is not the same as this song.
That's absolutely correct.
Yes. So I think it grabs a lot of people who have had the experience of like, I felt like I was just here and like taken for a ride that maybe I didn't want to go on, but like this person was so like a force of nature to me. And this is talking about how that can be awful and also great at some points, and then my mind forgets to remind me that you're a bad idea, and just like it does speak to a very specific experience, and if it's not yours, that's completely fine, but maybe. I'm saying that's why it was added to the album.
Okay.
But next week
what are we talking about?
We're talking about Red.
All right.
Let's go.
Is it red because of the red string board of the
it should be
conspiracy theory?
It's red because for her at the time, red was the color of love, and we'll get into that. She does a lot with color themes in her whole discography. It, I think, really starts with red, and that's
that
what
would
we'll
make sense.
Yeah.
Right.
But the red string like board comes out hard on that album with the different relationships, how they're tied lyrically to other songs in the album, to other artists' songs. But I won't do a whole intro here.
That'll be in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you to Joseph, our editor.
The magician in chief.
Literally, everybody take your hat off to him. We wouldn't have a show without him. Thank you to our tech manager, David, to our publicist, Rebecca, and our art director, Talitha. And thank you for listening.
Hope to see you again soon.
See you soon.